There we go. Okay. Bridger Tallman, Sustainability Administrator for the City of Westminster.
I'm Brooke Pike with Energy Outreach Colorado. We are the LIBAC implementer also.
Good morning, all. Holly Harris, Building Decarbonization.
Hello, Luke Charbonneau, Senior Program Specialist, Incentives and Advising.
Robert Spots, Manager of the Powerhead Colorado Program.
Good morning, Susie Strife, Director of Sustainability for Boulder County and the Chair of Powerhead Colorado Technical Committee.
Good morning, Cam Kennedy, DRCOG, Division Assistant.
Hi, I'm Melody Mascarenas. I'm with the I'm Melody Mascarenas. I'm the Sustainability Commerce City.
And Jan, Director of Green Workforce, City and County.
Liz Babcock, the Executive Director of Denver's Climate Office.
Good morning. Gabrielle Rink, Program Implementation Manager, Center for Energy and
Selk, Program Manager for Communication.
Good morning, Clay McComb, Program Manager of Workforce and Industry Development, Powerhead, Colorado.
Hi everyone, Mac Prather, Program Manager working on our incentives and low-income program.
Hi everyone, Greg Meow, Program Manager for the Building Policy Collaborative.
Eric Wilson, National Renewable Energy Laboratory.
Jackson with EmpowerCom and the African American Trade Association, and the one that got my coffee late. So, all right.
Wonderful. Thanks everybody for joining in person. We are going to hand it over to Clay to give us a quick recap of the Sunrise engagement session last week.
All right. I don't have slides, so I don't know why I came up here, but last week we held a stakeholder engagement session with DORA in attendance. So just to recap, earlier this summer, DRCOG submitted a Sunrise review application to DORA. This is the type of application anyone in the public can submit to the state when they feel an occupation should be licensed at the state level. We're investing $200 million into the HVAC industry, and currently the HVAC occupation is licensed locally through a patchwork of different licensure. It's very burdensome on the contractors. It's actually burdensome on the permitting offices, we heard as well. And DORA does a 6-month, really a 3-month review starting now to the end of the year. When I asked them what their engagement looked like during that review, they offered me a Google Doc that I could share with anyone in the industry to fill out. And I just was, this is such a big deal that I really felt like, we needed to get the voices of the industry in front of DORA. So I asked if they would be open to a stakeholder session. They said that's highly unusual for them. They haven't done one in 10 years, but if we set it up, they would come. And so we did. We set it up, and we held one session for industry members to talk to DORA, and then an afternoon session, same day, for permitting offices and chief building officials to come and talk to DORA. So all in all, I think total numbers for the day, we had over 200 participants in person and hybrid. Pretty cool. Definitely blew up, way bigger than I thought it was going to be. And as Robert put it, this room was filled with a much different crowd than is normally in this room. Especially in the morning, we had upwards of 60 different industry HVAC contractors, some traveling from across the state just to get their voices heard. I thought the meeting was overwhelmingly positive. I was expecting a little bit of everything. We wanted just an agnostic approach, just give all the feedback. It was overwhelmingly evident that industry needs this state license, and it's in terms of what they said, the biggest barrier right now to growing the workforce and to just elevating the industry. So that was very encouraging. The afternoon session with local governments was also positive. I think there was a little more pushback as far as the logistics of how it would be implemented. I know El Paso County in particular was kind of hesitant and against it just because they have a pretty solid system going on down there. But there's so many other jurisdictions that need more support, and that's what this license would give them. So as an update, DORA will publish their review findings on December 31st of this year. I don't know why, but New Year's Eve, they're gonna post their review for or against their recommendation for state licensure. That doesn't create a bill. There's no language on what that would look like specifically. It doesn't find a sponsor. All it is a positive finding, which from what we've heard from lobbyists, you need a positive sunrise review if you want to even explore a bill. And so for now, that's the only action we're taking. We held this stakeholder session, which is more than normally happens. And now we wait until December 31st, which frankly, I'm kind of okay with. Robert, anything you wanted to add from those sessions?
I'll just say that DORA was just so appreciative of it happening. You know, it's just, I don't think there's any way that Google Doc could have kind of represented in the same way as 150 industry folks showing up and taking time out of their daily business to voice their opinion on this, which was hugely in favor of finding a statewide licensure. So kudos to Clay for putting that together and all his work on this, and we'll hope for the best on December 31st. Thank you.
Thanks, Clay. We're going to move on to agenda item number 5, Building Policy Collaborative Jurisdictional Subaward Program Update with Greg.
I suppose I should be up here. And Crystal, if you want to come up and join me as well for the slides that you'll be talking about. Perfect. Cam to the rescue. So we're here today to start talking a little bit about the Jurisdictional Subaward Program. Really excited to start this conversation. We just wrapped up last Friday, round 1 of the subawards. And so we're excited to be able to do a little report out on what participation looks like and how we're doing with that program. And then begin that conversation around round 2, which we previewed for you all a little bit, running a competitive round. We're really now in the process of needing to kick off and start design of that program so that we can bring it back to the technical committee and the oversight committee and bring it up to the full board for a recommendation for approval, so that we can distribute the remainder of our money. So really excited to have this conversation and start this process off. So our agenda for this meeting really quickly is we'll give you a little bit of that background just to remind you what the program is, what we're trying to accomplish with it, give you a little bit update on what happened in round 1, and then we'll dive into this conversation around round 2. We won't be talking to you and just at you the whole time. You may see that there's a number of whiteboards that we've put up around the room. So we are going to break out into a little bit of a brainstorming session with you all and hopefully access some of that technical expertise that we have in the room as we begin this round 2 conversation. So our goals, just to reflect on round 1 successes and challenges, and then to really get all of your feedback on our sort of round 2 goals, kind of the proposed subaward model. So how would we run the grant opportunity or subaward opportunity? And then just to start brainstorming the eligible funded activities. We had a relatively narrow list of policy-related things that we were funding last time. We're thinking about potentially expanding that, still supporting policy initiatives, but maybe trying to expand some of those eligible activities to encourage additional participation and encourage some of those precursors necessary or preconditions necessary for some of our jurisdictions to actually go out and adopt our more advanced building decarbonization policies. So, quick review of the subaward. The goal of the Building Policy Collaborative in general has been to equitably shift our region's building stock towards net zero emissions through consistent region-wide building policies. That includes our building codes, as well as policies targeting our existing building stock, both commercial and residential, so BPS, and potentially something like a home energy score, transparency type policy for our residential sector. Our program supports our jurisdictions in doing this through the direct subaward funding opportunities that we provide, and that is the vast majority of our money, $34.8 million. Of our $39 million program is going into pass-through subawards to our jurisdictions. We have some of that money earmarked for research. We have a research RFP that is open right now, closes on November 11th. Really excited to get a contractor in to help start answering the questions that all of our jurisdictions have and rebut many of the talking points that come up in opposition to the policies that we're pursuing. And then we also support our jurisdictions through the peer network. That's where we have monthly meetings with all of our participating jurisdictions. We're currently in the process with those jurisdictions of building a roadmap. I will be coming to you next month to talk about that. But that's really a visioning document, kind of a long-range planning document, similar to some of the other types of documents that DRCOG is used to developing for our building sector, sort of a regional vision for what the local policy landscape should look like related to building policies in the future. And so deep in the work of that, and we'll be splitting off into our policy working groups early next year, where our jurisdictions will be identifying which policies they want to focus on, and they'll be jumping into working with each other to develop essentially what the model policy is that we'll be recommending to our jurisdictions for adoption. So that, to really achieve that regional consistency goal, we'll be developing those set of policies over the next year. And the hope is that in 2027, most of our jurisdictions will be bringing those to their councils and committees for adoption. So the subaward program, as I mentioned, is that $34.8 million of pass-through funds. And just to remind folks, this was a formula award that was approved previously with award tiers ranging from $50,000 for the smallest communities all the way up to $2 million for the largest communities. And that formula was largely based on, or solely based really on, our existing population and jobs across the region and the projected growth in those areas. It weighted slightly more towards our existing conditions, but we wanted to accommodate future building growth in our awards as well. So those opened in June. They closed. We probably left the window open a little too long. We had, because how many did we get in on the last day or last week? 14 in the last week, probably like 5 of those on the last day, at least 3 or 4 of them after 3 p.m. on Friday. So we're still looking at those and trying to review them. But I think that that's probably just how it goes with the subaward opportunities in general. As a reminder, our subaward goals for round 1 were to really promote the reduction of building-related climate pollution through local policy change. One of the things that had been workshopped in a number of workshops prior to the launch of this program really was that there's a lack of capacity in our jurisdictions to, from a staffing perspective, to be able to develop these policies, have those conversations internally with all, local staff to, build buy-in to the policies, and then, for implementation as well. A lot of these policies do require enforcement, and there's definitely challenges that jurisdictions have identified related to that. And so we also wanted to support our jurisdictions in participating in the BPC, right? We have a lot of meetings that we're having here now, and we have a lot more related to all of our policy work, and so we know that we're asking a lot of our jurisdictions and wanted them to be able to participate. The subaward goals, and these were the eligible uses that we allowed. So what we identified as sort of priority funding opportunities for the applications were, number one, staff capacity. Number two, I guess one is the only one that has a real priority to it. Everything else, we were kind of really, open to what people wanted. But we are allowing for training and certification opportunities to build capacity for local staff, technical assistance to help develop implementation plans for policies that our jurisdictions were considering adopting, or to study kind of the impact of the policies that they are considering. Permitting and system support updates. A lot of our permitting processes are not equal between our electric appliances and our gas appliances, and so there's been a lot of work that people have been trying to go and do to address challenges around that. And then the last one that we've really been encouraging everyone to do is to fund local engagement and coordination for community engagement led by the local jurisdictions. Everyone's going to be going through their own policy adoption and implementation process. We know that they need, to do that the right way to build all the community buy-in, they'll need to engage in robust community engagement processes. So I'll turn it over to Crystal to share a little bit about the round one results.
So as Greg mentioned, round one closed last Friday at 5 p.m. And I wrote these slides about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so we actually have some updates. We actually had around 27 of our jurisdictions apply out of a total of 64, and that actually accounts for about 42% of our jurisdictions. We did have some jurisdictions who were not interested in participating in the subaward as well as with the BPC. And then we also had a group of jurisdictions that were a bit non-responsive to this subaward opportunity. We did actually have one collaboration that I'm aware of right now, and that's between Superior and North Glen. It was a very creative collaboration of how they were using their funds. And as Greg mentioned, we received most of our applications around the deadline. We received 4 applications at first in August. So we had the City of Denver, Lakewood, Westminster, and Longmont all come in pretty early. And then we had about 9 applications come in the week of the 22nd, around that date. And then the remaining came in last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So that was kind of looking at the results at the jurisdictional level. Looking at the funds, so these numbers are slightly out of date. We are essentially obligating 75% of the total amount, which is $34.8 million. And so with all of these awards, we are obligating $25,950,000 in round one. So slightly more than we were anticipating with the formula awards. Most of these applications, as Greg mentioned, these were all formula amounts. Most of the applications, and actually I can say 99% of the applications were over $300,000. We only had one community apply that was allotted $50,000, which was the town of Nederland. It's such a small amount, it ended up not being very enticing to these jurisdictions, understandably. And then the remaining funds will be used in round two, which Greg will mention, but that right now is $8.8 million for round two. As Greg mentioned, there's all of these eligible uses. The number one use that was requested in every single application was staffing, which is very understandable with all of the budget cuts and restraints that are happening right now in our region and in the state. What's great though is that the staffing can be used for internal support of, actually increasing either part-time or full-time FTE, but there's some creative solutions of using this to also do external staffing, of using contractors in our communities like Shums Coda or Charles Abbott, where they actually provide building code support to these jurisdictions. But when the subaward is up, if the jurisdictions can't absorb the staff person, these contractors keep those staff. So it provided a lot of security for our jurisdictions. But again, that all fell in under staffing, a lot of training and certification. This was to upskill current staff as well as to help train new staff that are coming on board. It can be hard to find staff with a lot of this experience sometimes. So that training is going to be very helpful. Technical assistance, there's a lot of things that fell under this bucket. One of this was sustainability and long-range planning, either creating these documents or updating these documents. An example of this was City of Aurora. They apparently they have not updated their plan since 2007, so they are filed under the technical assistance bucket to update that plan, but also update a greenhouse gas inventory to tie into a new plan to help them get more stakeholder support and hopefully support from their council in the future on these policies. There's also a lot of research that fell into this bucket as well, like just analysis of the building stock or analysis on certain policies. Again, it was really great to see a lot of the jurisdictions using this funding and thinking about the long-term goals of this is where we struggle, this is where we get a lot of pushback on these policies from residents or stakeholders, and trying to use like research and data to help funnel into that, as well as to create resources for all the new codes that they're adopting and things like that. Policy adoption, this was a policy implementation subaward, so this was in every single application. We have a good chunk of our jurisdictions, I think, at least from the application side, about 25% have already adopted the 2024 or have complied with state minimums when it comes to the energy code. So we had another chunk of our jurisdictions who are going to be adopting this, but needed more assistance behind that. So that kind of fell into this bucket of like, we're gonna need some contractor to support to like go to council and help us support why we're adopting these policies and things like that. It was really great to see. I think about 10% of the applications, mind you, we're still reviewing some of these, about 10, maybe 15% had existing building policies that they were considering. A lot of benchmarking and building performance standards, as well as residential transparency. So the way I describe these policies is essentially understanding how your buildings are performing and then eventually setting targets on those buildings to kind of decrease your energy use or GHG emissions. The residential transparency side is kind of new for Colorado, and a good amount of our jurisdictions latched onto that and is using the subaward funding to push that policy along in Colorado. So that's exciting to see. And then permitting system updates and software, like Greg said, this is kind of helping on the code side and helping track like heat pump permits better and things like that. A lot of software support for the existing building policies also fell under this bucket. And then just some key insights from round one. So the jurisdictional characteristics, with all of the jurisdictions that applied, we noticed that we were missing a lot of the mountain towns and communities in this round, as well as the southern communities and jurisdictions as well. A lot of these communities had the smaller amounts, like the 50,000 allotted to them, and I just don't think that was a strong enough incentive to bring them to the table. And we did really incentivize like partnerships and collaborations, but it seemed like that it wasn't something that was very attractive to the communities. So that was something we noticed about the geographic distribution. There's a lot of departments involved in these discussions. So I met with all of these communities one-on-one to kind of provide some support on the application. And usually it was someone from finance, contracts, the building code department, and then the sustainability department. And a lot of our jurisdictions didn't have all those departments either. They're missing FTE because they're, they needed more staff. So that was a huge challenge in pulling together this application for them. And then the jurisdictions also had a lot of questions about, the guardrails and the goals of the subaward, as well as like, what are EPA's requirements and how's DRCOG feeling about this? So there was a lot of that, questions and concerns about that we provided a lot of support to the jurisdictions on. As we mentioned, the 50K, that just wasn't a good enough incentive. The 5-month application timeline was long. I also know that the state's impact accelerator also had 2 deadlines over the course of our 5-month application as well. So some jurisdictions were meeting with me and then meeting with the state immediately after and trying to figure out how they're going to use the state's funding and ours in collaboration. And then with scoping challenges, I kind of touched on this, but essentially, this is a policy implementation grant, but Greg and I had a lot of discussions on wanting to meet EPA's intentions with this, and I should say the grant writer's intentions too. But we have some jurisdictions that we knew had a lot of I'll just say, a lack of political support. And so a lot of those policies they are trying to explore, but they couldn't guarantee that their councils would adopt that. So we did a lot of hand-holding there of like, okay, well, how can we use those funds to help you staff up and get you as much data and resources internally as possible so you can at least present this policy and you've done your due diligence as a civil servant, but, you know, it's what council does is out of your hands. But DRCOG will be there, you know, supporting you the whole way and using this funding as well to support you. So a lot of conversations and concerns around that as well. And then we did help with every jurisdiction. I think that was a very great opportunity for us to kind of meet with all of them one-on-one and kind of learn where they are, what their goals were, and how we could help them do that. Sorry, Greg, I'm talking a lot. I think this is the final slide. Through the subaward, and I'll also say the building policy collaborative conversations as well, we have learned from the jurisdictional staff that they really need help in educating the electeds, essentially, and council members. And so we're kind of exploring how we could step in and do that. And then I don't think any application has kind of cited using the funds to do that, but we're kind of trying to support them on the BPC side with that. As I mentioned, a lot of missing staff or low staff capacity in this application required a lot of cross-departmental help. There's a lot of challenges right now in the building policies themselves, as well as with very outdated permitting systems, and it takes a long time to push that along internally and get the buy-in. So that sometimes is hard with these applications. And then again, kind of thinking about the grid and having a lot of those questions too of like, you know, you're using this money to support these policies, but is the grid ready? You know, is our region ready for this? You know, how is DRCOG going to support there? So a lot of, you know, questions and things around that. So I think that's.
All right, thanks, Crystal. That was really great. So that was a little bit about the lessons learned from round one. I want to just go back really quickly to highlight a couple of things. We did the back-end math on sort of the round one distribution. It does cover basically 85% of our region's population is being covered by a jurisdiction, or we awarded awards to jurisdictions that cover 85% of our existing population. So I think that that's really great. You know, I think we're getting a lot of participation, and we'll have large regional impact already. What was the other thing I was going to say? The other thing I was going to say is that of the 8.9 million that we have left over for round two, that is the pot that we'll be talking about for round two. If we were to equally distribute that amongst all of our non-participants, it is around $200,000 per award. So that's just a point of reference. As Crystal mentioned, we captured almost all of the large jurisdictions. There's about maybe 5 or so large jurisdictions by award amount that did not participate in round one. And that's definitely something we'll want to talk about as we get to round two. All right, so let's start talking about round two. As we previewed for you before, the goal, the initial idea behind round two is to run a competitive award process that is open to all of our jurisdictions. So we said that we wanted to try to incentivize new participation, but we didn't guarantee anyone all of their formula award from round one if they didn't participate in that round. So that's one of those things that we're going to have to, figure out and define in our policy moving forward. Our goal, and you can see that this was written before we add all of our applications in, is to try to obligate as much of this money as possible. And ideally, we don't want to run around three. You know, we can spend the vast majority of what we have left and then work with all of our jurisdictions in spending that down over the next 4 years. That's the other thing I was going to mention. We are in the process, just as it relates to round one, we're in the process of finalizing or contracting with all of our jurisdictions. We will be doing basically quarterly check-in meetings with all of our jurisdictions that will be receiving awards to manage all of those award processes going forward. So in future meetings, we can report out on sort of what jurisdictional progress looks like. And we're really excited to have a fully tabulated Excel spreadsheet of what everyone's doing, all their different activities and timelines of their different policy objectives. All right, back to round two. Apologies for the aside. So we want to spend the rest of the money. I think our goals are to incentivize participation, particularly from the smaller communities. I think it's really important, to me at least, that we try to have demonstration, to demonstrate that these policies can go into place in smaller rural communities, whether that's up in the mountains, down south, in the Eastern Plains, or even in sort of the northern I-25 corridor. Those would be our target areas and the types of communities that we're hoping to bring in as new participants. I think we wanted to add the innovation criteria here, particularly for our applicants that have already received subawards, to say, okay, you're getting your formula award, what can you should do, or what ideas do you have that go above and beyond your initial application that will really move the ball on one of the policies or the impact of the policies, right? So it can be about new policy development. Maybe we expand our criteria of the types of policies we're looking at, or it could be about implementation. Like, what are the ideas that will really make sure that when you do pass this, it's going to be very, as maximally impactful as possible. And then I think one of the other criteria that we've considered internally adding to the subaward goals is to try to figure out a way, which we discussed in round one, of incentivizing activities that will benefit low-income communities. I think there's a lot of question marks about how do you ensure, how do you tie the through line in an application and evaluate what the potential policy impact will be for low-income communities. But we know there's a lot of concern with these policies around having a detrimental impact for low-income communities, being cost drivers. So we're very interested in ideas that our jurisdictions can come up with that might address some of those challenges. Initial ideas about the model. So Crystal mentioned the state's local impact accelerator model. That's their CPRG grant. That's still open, and I think their first round closes at the end of this week, and then they have a second round that they'll be running that kind of closes in the spring as well. We've been looking at that, one, as a model for how we would run our second round. One, because I think a lot of our local jurisdictions are practiced with it. They've gone through that process already. They know what it looks like. And two, because it would let us, I think, do the matching on our end to maximize our spend and maximize the impact. So what this process looks like is a letter of intent process where the jurisdictions outline kind of what their project proposal is. It includes, generally speaking, a tiered budget of sort of what's the minimally viable project that they're proposing, kind of the most ideal, standard budget, and then they have a vision sort of stretch budget. By providing us potentially up to 3 budgets, it would allow us to then sort of see how responsive those applications are to the criteria that we've developed, and then sort of do the math on the back end to make sure that all of our awards sort of maximize how much we're able to obligate. The timeline that we're going to be doing this on, so right now we're drafting up a proposal, and that this conversation that we'll have today will inform. And we'll be bringing this back to this committee in December for initial review and discussion. So it'll be a discussion item in December. Ideally, we have really great discussion. We finalize what the policy looks like, come back to you in January. You say, yay, that looks great, go for it. You vote to endorse it and move it up the chain. It goes to the oversight committee, and we bring it to the full board in January. And then that would let us, in the most accelerated timeline, open this opportunity in February. I think reflecting on some of our lessons learned, we don't want to keep it open too long. So around a 3-month timeline. So either opening it in February or March of 26 and closing it at the end of April or May. So before we break out into our little breakout activity that I'll walk us through. Some of the questions that we're thinking through right now are the, eligible jurisdictions. Our award was open to all DRCOG jurisdictions previously. Some of the activities that we have identified, Clay's work with the state licensure, is that something that we would want to potentially support through this? It would maybe require us to expand our eligible jurisdictions in our policy. Eligible uses. Do we want to stick to the eligible uses that we previously identified? Do we want to maintain the sort of guardrails that we had, which was really strongly no infrastructure projects and no rebates or incentive projects? What new eligible uses would we want to add to this? If we were going to incentivize new participation, one way is to increase the award amount that people are eligible for. Another way is to increase the amount of things that they can do with the money. What are the barriers or guardrails we would want to put on those expanded uses? And then, just to preview that we're going to be having this conversation not just as it relates to the jurisdictional subawards, but we do have both an innovation award and the community-based organization awards in Mac and Chris's programs that will be developing policies for very rapidly. And so this is going to be good practice for us just to say, those are going to target specific other uses, but it's good to keep in the back of your mind some of these grant or subaward decisions, and then you can bring that to the next conversations as we have them. All right, enough talking at you. Actually, we talked much longer than I thought we would, so apologies for that. I guess before we go into breakout, does anyone have any questions about the information that we presented previously? Great. So what we thought we would do is you'll see that there's 4 breakout boards around the room. We had accommodated 4 breakouts if we had full attendance, but given the numbers that we have here, what I think we'd like to do is split into 2 groups that will rotate through facilitated conversation at each of those stations. So I was going to recommend that folks start at maybe group 1 and group 3 where Crystal's at. If you want to self-select into it, I think we have, that would put 6 committee members at each station. The breakout activities are going to go through some of those grant design criteria conversations where we have some follow-up questions where hopefully we can have a good conversation that will inform the proposal that we bring back to you in December. So hopefully we can get up and move around, and that's a thing that people like doing. There's one group in the back with Crystal that is going to start with sort of project ideas and sort of what types of projects do you want to see jurisdictions proposing. And then the other group will start at group 1 over here with Robert, and that group will be exploring kind of the friction points in policy that we might want to start addressing or identifying that could be addressed. Here. What are the frictions? By funding. State Well, I think the look like taking on. I think the challenge is, and minute warning. Why don't we stay in our groups, and then we'll just change conversation. A lot of the I'd like to shift forward. I think what the other this conversation I can take a look. Time. That's how I'm gonna model. Everyone needs. All the fund is actually the thing that we've been thinking about. Plan. There are how we should run. I'm going to put our jurisdiction. Are like buyers. If we come
I'm interested to know what. Okay, yeah. For my stick hot and low, it's never very poor heat. I feel like I have to wear my. Every single time.
Now when I wear it, I'm like, I want my Nintendo.
First edition.
All right, thanks everyone. I just wanted to say thank you all for your participation. And we look forward to reporting back with a proposal in December.
I'm glad that's on the radar, because I just thought of that right when we walked away.